Good day, superheroes. Colorful costume crusaders fighting the battle to destroy the evil forces of the Gang, the Space Monster, and the Outer God. They have captured the imaginations of millions since their inception in the late 1930s. Batman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Superman, take that soups, have been household names for decades, and were surefire ways to get butts in seats for the latest epic. Superhero stories at their best could be a combination of humor, action, and drama. And what combination you got depended on the tone of the story. Batman can be a humor-filled romp with Batman tearing it up on the dance floor, and Iron Man can be as depressing as any Spider-Man story. They were versatile characters that could literally do anything. But that wasn't good enough for some. See, in the late 90s, new writers were coming into the medium and they had a major hate boner for Batman and his boys. Now that was suggestive. But they did! Warren Ellis and Garth Ennis were some of the frontmen for the so-named, by me, emo age of comics. It started off innocently enough with The Authority in 1999 by Warren Ellis. Imagine an analog to the Justice League, only they were way harder edged and more cynical. It would be the harbinger of things to come. Soon, all heroes were harder-edged assholes, and Batman didn't even know how to get down with the ladies. The emo age ostensibly is still going on today, as with few exceptions, superheroes have lost their ability to be fun, at least outside of the movies, and even then it's getting rarer all the time. Was there ever really a need to deconstruct Batty or the Spidey? They were costumed adventurers that fought crime, simple as. What more did you want? Hell, they even gave you more, with things like Long Halloween. The emo comics of the early 2000s were a sight to behold. You had The Boys, Transmetropolitan, and so much more pretentious dreck. And I ate some of that up when I went through an emo phase in my mid-20s. But really, it just came down to the writers trying to be hip and cool by saying all superheroes were secretly evil, man. I'll tell you this, the edge got so bad that an emo age comic had an evil version of Superman enjoying the screams of dying children? Yes, that happened. Oh, and the Batman in that universe was really a villain and got together with a sidekick named, I kid you not, Jailbait. That's the level of edginess we are at here, and the less I tell you about the Crossed, the better. Were these comics like the writer's journaling therapy or something? Yeah, some fans ate them up. And now The Boys is an edgy TV show. So with all that in mind, what should be one of the most emo, the most preachy, and the most annoying of all the emo age comics is actually pretty much the best of its era. Today, we are looking at the 2007 miniseries Black Summer by Warren Ellis. Black Summer is in its own continuity and features the Superman analog named John Horace killing the President of the United States due to learning of war crimes during the Iraq War. Yeah, 2007. This was considered quite controversial in its day. How times have changed. John Horace says that a new election must be called and that he will be watching. John Horace was a member of the Seven Guns, a group of superheroes that were roughly analogous to the Justice League. You got your Batman, aka Tom Noir, you got your Tragic Death character, you got your Flash, you get the picture. Unlike what would happen today, the rest of the Seven Guns are appalled at what John Horace does, and one of the Guns immediately issues a press release to try and calm tensions. But it is to no avail. The best part here is that the comic does not in any way try and say that Horace could be right. The vast majority of the comic splits the narrative between two plot lines. One, where you have the remaining members of the Seven Guns try and survive the federal government onslaught and try and do something about Horace, and two, we see through flashbacks how the Seven Guns came to be. What makes this comic special is that it's not an anti-superhero screed, nor does it preach its politics too much. Arguably, the Superman kills W plot is not quite that accurate, as this is a constructed world, and in that world the president could be different, and we know it's a constructed world because during a flashback we learn that a major American city has foreign mercenaries deployed as a police force, which in our world would be called an invasion, and the National Guard would be called to ask them to leave. Quite politely. So clearly, this world is not our own. The characters are nothing short of excellent. The comic explains why they can act assholish or erratic. The Seven Guns are cybernetically enhanced superheroes, and they use guns to activate their powers. And over time, their cybernetics have started to make them go crazy. The Batman analog is a bit of a dick, but at least he knows basic right from wrong. John Horace does not spend the entire comic wah-ha-haing, and the main evil thing we see him do is ice the Prez. This keeps the entire comic more morally ambiguous in places. The comic dares to ask, what if Superman became bad not because he wanted to be generically evil, or because he was secretly evil all along, but instead because he just wanted to do what he thought was right. Art for the comic was done by Juan Jose Reap and is pretty damn good, and thankfully, unlike some of his later work, it's fairly easy to follow. It's super hyper detailed, but thankfully not too bloody. The emo age loved to show flayed bodies and other sorts of nastiness. If you've never read an emo age comic before, get ready for some of that old ultra violence. Dialogue is remarkably not terrible. It's not great, but we don't have characters just reading off the Reddit posts in lieu of dialogue, and one can really get into the characters. If you've never read or heard of this comic before, give it a try, as it's able to deconstruct the superhero deconstruction. Alright, now that those bloody normies are gone, Black Summer can really be summed up as a tragedy, and it's a damn good tragedy. Batman and Superman are at their best when they are best friends and represent different sides of the same coin. In Black Summer, we learn that John Horace and Tom Noir were best friends, and that they, along with the Seven Guns, started their crime-fighting venture with the best of intentions, and they wanted to clean up their unnamed city that was filled apparently with foreign mercs operating on American soil. Not too sure about that one, Warren, but your heart's in the right place, kind of. We do get to see that Horace was always a little nutty and was the special one of the group, so his going evil didn't just pop out of nowhere. Eventually, the government attacks the remaining Seven Guns, and Tom Noir is seemingly blown up by a tank whilst trying to surrender. The rest of the comic has the four guns, later only three guns, fighting the military. Horace learns that Noir has been killed and shows up at a military command post, but doesn't just start slaughtering people, and the general in charge doesn't do anything stupid, and the conversation between the two shows that Horace is not necessarily a raging lunatic and still maintains a degree of sanity. He is bad, but has some elements of his former self. Horace is able to learn through the evidence that the general presents that Tom Noir was the only one that could have fired the tank, and he apparently has the ability to control any electronics. The general tries to reason with Horace, but then the tent comes under assault by some government super soldaten. The general begs Horace to take the fight away from his troops as they stand no chance against the supers, and Horace says that that will likely not be possible as he's on the Empire State Building and the biplanes have finally come. Not only is that good writing, but that line right there is the deconstruction of Horace, not Superman. Eventually, the remaining three guns save Horace from the government, but tell him that they never want to see him in their city ever again. We get some great dialogue between the three guns and Horace. The three guns say they want to help the normal people of the city and not mess with the greater political crap, and that was what they had always wanted to do. Horace says that they're insane, and they respond that it's Horace that is nuts, and Horace damns himself by saying that he is not insane, but instead he's right. Oh dear. The comic ends tragically for John Horace and Tom Noir. Turns out that Not Batty faked his death, and in the final panels deconstructs the very idea of a superhero turning evil and killing the president. Noir tells Horace that killing the president made him no better than Lee Harvey Oswald, and continues with the diss track by saying that with all his power, Horace couldn't think of anything more creative or better than killing the president. Then Tom blows them both up with the final hidden gun. And as the comic comes to a close, the final line of the comic is really hard hitting. Tom Noir says that he had to kill John Horace because Horace was too concerned with saving the day. Oh my god! This comic actually got it. What's the difference between Superman and John Horace? Superman wants to help people, and John Horace wanted to save the day. He wanted to be the good guy. He wanted to be the hero. He was cosplaying as the Superman. He didn't want to really help people. That was just something that let him look good. And that is how he became the villain. Batman and Superman are not evil. In their true stories, they were men first and heroes second. They each wanted to save people, not the day. Black Summer is a deconstruction of the superhero deconstruction. It asks the question of what is a superhero and shows what one is and what one isn't, and doesn't just say superheroes bad. John Horace may be a Superman analog, but he is no Superman. He is just, as the comic says, some idiot with a bucket on his head. This comic shows that a hero must be more than a costume. A hero must be more than the sum of his abilities, and that the hero must be selfless in the pursuit of justice. John Horace fell due to his hubris and his selfishness. He wanted to be a hero, and in so doing became that which he hated. Heroism is a path of sacrifice, and Horace just liked the idea and not the reality of that path. Sadly, Warren Ellis really didn't write anything nearly as good as this ever again. The Black Summer comic has long since fallen into obscurity. If you haven't read it in a while, dig it out and remember why the path of the light is a hard one. And so, I am General Lotz, wishing you good Dark Knight Returns and good Superman, Batman Generations, whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.